To be in the background most of the program, and I'd like to welcome everybody that has joined us. Charles Bailey, Vice Chair of the Lummi Island Ferry Advisory Committee, will be welcoming others, and Foster will be our keynoter and kind of get the group revved up a little bit. That'll be followed by Russell and Shane. Give us about 5 minutes each on their particular wheelhouse activities with Decatur and Glacier, and then we'll go into a discussion on microgrids. I think we all know what microgrids are, so we don't need to plow that field again. I'd like to concentrate as a brainstorm for what are the obstacles we're going to be facing as an island trying to do this if we pull this off, and what are the opportunities? What's the paycheck for us? First round, we'll ask for a spokesperson from each group after the presentations. So Shane, you'll hand it off to PSC, whoever the spokesperson or whoever is elected on the spot by who showed up. And that'll go down in the order of the attendees till we get down to the second round, and then we'll start to bring other people in. The third round will be kind of an open mic, and the train can run off the rails if it has to at that point. And at 11:50, Charles is taking notes furiously what his takeaways are for us, and do a wrap up, and we'll all be out of here before 12 o'clock noon, I promise. So with that, I'm going to introduce Charles Bailey, who's going to give us a few words and a welcome. Charles?
Well, thanks, and good morning, Mike and everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Mike, we really appreciate what you've done to bring us all together on this important subject. I'm Charles Bailey, and I'm a member of the Lummi Island Ferry Advisory Committee, or LIFAC, which is an advisory committee the County Council set up back in 2011. Two other members of LIFAC are also here today, Raymond Blake, our chair, and Judy Olson. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Roland Middleton at Public Works, who's worked hand in glove with us for several years and has really been key to all we've been able to do. The Lummi Island Ferry will soon be 60 years old. The Whatcom County Council has voted to replace it with a 34-car ferry, which would go into service no later than December 2026. LIFAC and the County Council agreed that the new ferry should be designed and built with a diesel battery hybrid propulsion system, which would make it easy to convert the new vessel in future to all-electric operation. The constraint, though, is on all-electric operation is shore power. At present, there is insufficient power at Gooseberry Point on the mainland and on Lummi Island itself to charge an all-electric vessel. We are therefore all ears about the possibility for a microgrid application to solve our power problem and enable our new ferry to go all electric at an early date. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Foster Hildreth, the General Manager of Orcas Power and Light Company, Wapalco. Foster?
Thanks, Charles and Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys. It's interesting seeing all the faces on Zoom. It doesn't look any different than the normal ones we have here in the San Juan Islands. I know you guys are just a stone's throw away from us, so really appreciate. Thanks for the invite. Any wisdom that we can have to lend to the effort, we're here to help, and we really are. When we first started these conversations, it was really actually with Guimas Island. Guimas was trying to get their ferry retrofitted as well. I know that was through Skagit. And we first started having conversations about electrification of ferries back in those days. And I don't know exactly what the status of the Skagit ferry or the Guimas ferry run is, but I hope that we can all learn from that one, as well as what we're trying to grapple out here with Washington State ferries as well. I know when we were in those initial discussions, it became very obvious that shore power that you just alluded to, Charles, was going to be a big component, because when you plug in that electric ferry, boy, are you going to get a peak charge. And that's going to stress the system. It's going to stress our, submarine cable. It really is going to stress a lot of different components. And those peak charges we all know on our power bill become pretty noteworthy. Now, they're certainly going to be a lot lower than you're going to have with, filling up with diesel, gasoline and to fuel your ferries. But it's still very noteworthy about what the capacity is. So when we started looking at electrification of our service area, we're working with WSDOT, Washington State Ferries, and we're trying to figure out how to grapple with just what you guys are dealing with. And so if we can help in what you guys are struggling with, then it's going to help us as well. We're slated to be, probably in 2030 is when we're slated to see some of the electrification of our ferry system up here. And what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to learn how to do it right. And one of the first things that we realized when we were talking about the Guaymas ferry run, and now it's going to spill over into the Lummi Island ferry run, is what do we do in order to prepare for plugging that ferry in? And that's where we started our concept. Now, our concept is, you can look behind my shoulder and you see over on Decatur, that's our Decatur Island. I know that Mike was nice enough to send some links around. If you haven't had a chance to review some of the links that we have on our Decatur microgrid project, please go and look at it. There's there's a whole ceremonial presentation that we presented. We had Governor Inslee, and we had some other Department of Energy people that were there. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the video that we put together, please do. It gives you a good understanding of what we accomplished in a short period of time. What we started with our solar project, you can see over my shoulder, and then we followed it up with a battery, and we got a hold of a Department of Commerce, Washington State Department of Commerce battery grant for $1 million to build the battery component as a second stage. The solar project was built in 2018, and we just recently commissioned, and we're doing the burn-in process of the battery project as we speak with PNNL, if you're familiar with that group. It's gone really well. It's a good package to group them together. They're not cheap though. They're about, this one in particular, there was a $2 million battery that we're looking at. And then we had a community solar project that we can feed it with. So it's actually turned out really well because we got that Department of Commerce grant. I guess the vision that we want to face is we want to see these microgrids throughout our region. We want to see about, I look at it as we want to electrify enough of our service territory that we can at least get emergency power to the emergency facilities within our community. And we're starting with this one to do that. And we could probably get about 30% is what our initial goal, 30% of the power that we generate locally. If we have that available for emergency situations when our proverbial extension cord goes down on the mainland, that's our goal. Now, what we can use that to in the interim or as we go forward is use it for peak loads for when the ferries plug in. Now, think about it from our perspective. We have we have 3 ferry terminals that are probably going to be electrified. We're going to need to have shore power at those stations. And then we have another one that hopefully we could get, in due time. But if we can really get it so those ferries can, when they plug in, they tap into our grid. And when they do, our goal is to really electrify not only the battery, but also decrease some of our loads, some demand response components that if we can turn off and shut off different loads within our community, whether it's water heaters within our membership or anything that we can do to shun that load, optimize what we can on the solar side, and then discharge the battery, then we're trying to minimize the wear and tear on our system as well as minimize that peak. And I think you guys got the concept that goes along with it. And I really, I admire the fact that you guys are stepping up and really trying to figure out how to do it now as you're going forward electrification of your ferry. I think that's going to be needed. You look at the way the industry is going with carbon reduction and climate disruption as we all know it. We're looking at doubling our load by 2050 because we're trying to get the gasoline and the heating and electrification of our transportation system to go electric. And if we do that, we're going to be looking at massive loads. And as we do, we need to be very proactive in trying to figure out how we can manipulate our system to our advantage and making sure that we can have our system turn off and on when we need it based on our loads. And I think this microgrid is going to be the first step of, it's going to be essential. We look at it as, and I think Lummi Island's the same way. We look at it as, how do we weave all the important aspects of our community together, right? Because we love the environment we live in. We don't want to see anything happening to it. Anything that we can do to electrify our fleet actually reduces the sound. So so our orca whales are going to be able to catch their food, and they're going to be more vibrant. If we can really get some of the carbon out of the atmosphere, it helps them as well as the noise. So we're all in when it comes to electrification of the ferry system. And I think we have to be going forward, because as we're replacing the carbon, the coal plants being shut down, there's like 3,000 megawatts of coal plants being shut down, and it's going to be replaced with intermittent resources. And what we need to do with these microgrids is figuring out how to turn these off and on, so when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, that we actually have reliable power. So this is really good to think about from the microgrid perspective of the ferry connection, but it's going to serve you well in other aspects as well. So if we can work together to try to figure out how to get you guys emergency load through the battery system as well, that may serve you well, in the cases of an emergency if you lose power. I know that we can get into some of the particulars with Russell about the details of the microgrid, and I'll leave those up to him. But I know the battery component is a 1 megawatt battery with a 2 megawatt hour capability. I think if you guys have watched the video on it, it serves about 500 homes for about 4 hours. It's probably a fraction of what we need for the bigger picture for emergency perspectives. But we're going to be getting there kind of in short order. Again, we're looking at hopefully getting these things established right next to our ferry terminals and other areas of note within our community. Some of the population centers, we have a goal of electrifying those with microgrids as well.
Well, thank you so much, Foster. That's words of wisdom. Where do we sign? You got us. Russell, thank you for showing up, and you want to continue the discussion on your successful first project, but not the last.
Right. All right. So as Foster kind of introed it, we have a solar site on Decatur. Its AC output is 375 kW. So a fairly small site, but for Decatur Island, that's quite large, considering that's almost twice its summer load. Luckily, we have transmission interconnection right there, so it's really not a electrical system problem. The battery is, like he said, 1 megawatt, planned 2 megawatts. But when you try to extend the life of a battery out that long, degradation over time means that you don't get 2 megawatt hours for very long term, greater than 10 years. So we actually supersize the battery, if you will, so that we can capitalize it at today's cost and extend the life of it to somewhere between 13 and 20 years. So it's a 2.7 megawatt hour battery system. That's to allow for a not to exceed operational use of 2 megawatt hours annually, such that we can plan for future degradation. So it's, as he said, located on Decatur Island. The great thing about Decatur Island on our system is some of the, I see there's a planner from PSE out there. The great thing about that is that it's kind of at the starting point of our system. It's tied to our total load. It's behind the meter sets. So we can kind of use that to alter the load across the system, so we can, not tax the BPA submarine cable, save the life of that cable for a little bit during these peak loads. So less heat means, or less load means less heat, which means longer life of those cables. And that's the main use case of this particular project as it comes from an economical standpoint. We've also looked at certain things of using the certain generation resource aspects of the battery to stabilize voltage or VARs on the Decatur system alone, so we don't have to purchase voltage regulation equipment. Those those aspects really mean minimal dollars because of the cost of voltage regulation is pretty cheap. It does integrate with that solar system in that the output of the solar at certain times, the excess is when we plan to charge the battery, but we are currently in analysis with PNNL to be able to understand what's the most economic charge point. Is it at night when there's minimal loads, or is it for the battery system, or is it using the excess energies outputted by the community solar system? So these are things we'll plan on. And then there's the great thing of outage mitigation. The system as we have it today is used to kind of like a UPS to immediately handle the outage. As Foster said, 4 hours, sometimes even up to 6 hours in the summer, somewhere between 2 and 4 hours in the winter, depending on the amount of residences. This past winter, we saw more individuals on Decatur than prior years, so it was going to tax the battery a little more. And then there's just certain demand charges, like Foster mentioned, that we are going to be able to reduce with this battery while still reserving enough to deal with outage management. Just to give you some economics of this, the battery system, as Foster said, was roughly $2 million for the system. It's one of out of the Department of Commerce projects, not to include the Glacier project because they were in a different round than us. They went first, we'll call it. Out of the group we are in of the battery projects, we were one of the more economic projects per kWh in purchase. I'm not sure if that was timing contracts or the fact that we did more of an EPC, engineering, procurement, construction contract instead of doing an in-house design. So, you know, there's...
So Russell, could I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
On the next round, could you talk a little bit about funding this, how you structured your investor group, how it pays for it? I think that's probably one of the biggest obstacles that we'll face is trying to fund this. Yeah, there's grant money, but you guys seem to have it right.
So as we said, it's a community solar, and I'm not sure if everybody understands what that means. The solar portion of this project is 100% funded by those who are willing to put investment into the solar project. So we had, I'm not sure of the number of individuals that invested right offhand in the community solar, but it's in north of 300 individuals invested roughly $150 per I'll call it share. So we had a predefined portion of the solar system, the solar array that was considered a share, and basically sold it to the membership. We made a internal decision that it needed to be cheap enough that as many or any individual could likely join the system at $150. We didn't want to price certain individuals out, but also large enough that it was worthwhile to at least make a marginal effect on their offset of their bill.
Thank you.
So what they did is they invested in that solar, we meter it, and then subdivide that out to the members on their bills to offset any usage, so they don't have to build it on their roof. And the idea is the economics through scale of a community solar or a large array instead of bolting it to your roof.
I could chime in as well. On the battery side, what we did is we got a Department of Commerce grant, and anytime there's a Department of Commerce grant, it seems like it has a match to it. And I think that's what you're kind of alluded to, Mike, is how do you come up with that balance? So what we did is we work with PNNL, Pacific Northwest Labs, and we came up with use cases as we know them. And what we do is we use them and come up with the economics of how much is it going to save our system over the long haul, because we're not taxing it like Russell just alluded to. If you don't put heat on the system and your infrastructure lasts longer, especially those submarine cables, then it justifies a use case. And that turns out to be a financial benefit. So what we did is we really just paid for the upfront cost of that matching component from the utility itself, knowing that we're going to have less costs in the future. So it's a matching trade-off, if you will. And the way that it makes sense for us is that you can see the realized benefit outweighs our matching component. So that was our funding methodology. And I don't know exactly how you guys are structured, whether or not you can participate in the Washington Department of Commerce grant in the future, but I know that there's future grant opportunities out there along those same lines.
Thank you very much, Foster. I'm going to keep us moving on in a direction. Shane Richards from PSC, you want to take the mic and talk about Glacier a little bit?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Can you all hear me?
You bet.
All right. Well, Mike, you must be good friends with Kit, because when Kit reaches out and asks you to do something, it's hard for me to say no. So she's always helpful when I need it. So I'm happy to help back. Yeah, I made some slides. I don't know. I can share screen and we can go through this. I'll try to. Oh, I guess not. It doesn't matter. I can give you the high level background. I know other folks at PSC are probably more well versed in what we're doing with batteries now and into the future, but I can talk about Glacier. So for those of you that don't know, Glacier is sort of the last town on the way up to Mount Baker ski area there, east of Bellingham by about 45 minutes to an hour. It's our last actual bit of grid. The resort on the mountain serves itself. And so it comes with it some challenges. So as the Opalco guys talked about, PSC was part of the Clean Energy Fund 1 grant agreement. And so we ended up spending about $11.5 million on the battery storage project. Kind of construction was into the fall, winter of 2015 and the spring of 2016. And it's a 2 megawatt, 4.5 megawatt hour nameplate lithium ion battery facility. So 4 shipping containers, essentially the same amount of battery and capacity. And then one of the things we learned was we had some work to do on our end. So plugging in a fancy new battery into a substantially old substation wasn't going to fly with our system protection folks. So I'm sure similar to stuff you're trying to do, trying to bring a lot of load or all this out to kind of the end of the road, if you will, was kind of problematic for PSC. So we had some work to do on our side, and we actually had to install some upgrades to communications, pretty much upgraded the whole substation, and then put in some islanding reclosers. So we only have one distribution feeder circuit up there, so it makes it pretty straightforward. And our whole load out there in the middle of winter is maybe 2 or 3 megawatts. So we actually just pick up the town core during our islanding operations. And that's about 300 or 400 kVA connected, but what we find is about 150 kVA when we're islanding. And we're able to pick up like a little grocery store, the fire department, and a couple little kind of right in the town core of Glacier there, if anybody's ever been there. Yeah, and so, I think the cool thing, or some of the challenges that we had, it was a difficult location, kind of far from a lot of things, which is part of the use cases and part of the benefit, part of why we did it. But when you're doing your first ever thing in a place that's kind of hard to reach, that was a bit of a challenge. We also built what we call an AC battery. So, the battery is a vast facility, and there's, I think, 210 DC strings that are all managed within kind of behind this black box. So unfortunately, all we kind of see is a 2 megawatt, 4.5 megawatt battery, megawatt hour battery, not each string. So we found we'd have some issues with the strings. We couldn't keep them balanced. And to the point of the Opalco folks, trying to tax the battery as little as possible. So when we did our PNL testing, we found we didn't have as much granularity into each string, and that could lead to some problems. So I don't know how deployed on a ferry boat, but that can sink our operations occasionally. And then I don't know if anybody has a vacation home up in Glacier, but I got to send 1,000 postcards out like a half dozen times every time we would do some sort of test. The grid was our test bed, and to do that we have to send letters out and all this stuff. So a lot of angry people got to complain about, we don't want to be part of this test. So that's a little bit inconvenient. It's mostly vacationers, but there's a few kind of folks up there that weren't super pumped to lose power. But the benefit that I thought that we had, works. It's worked a bunch of times. Most notably, I think over one of the last holiday weekends, it worked, like, I think it was MLK Day or something. And so we were actually powering the town core with the batteries all day. And if you were there, you wouldn't have noticed. I mean, if you had a house out of the core, you wouldn't have had power, but we could provide the essential services that we want. That was one of the biggest use cases and goals. So that was cool. And it's not totally grid scale. We're not offsetting a whole wind farm on east of the mountains, but it's the first in our fleet. And we really had to pull a lot of stuff together. So doing some distribution automation, utilizing the battery storage, integrating all this together, and trying to learn how to be more flexible with our grid. So that was good. And yeah, I'm proud to be a part of the first one, and I'm excited that we're continuing on with some more stuff here in the future. So.
Well, thank you very much, Shane. That was enlightening, and thanks for keeping Mount Baker lights up and running at times.
Yeah, it's a great place to visit.
I'm going to turn it down. We have quite a contingent: Casey Harmon, Christopher Drumheller, Karen Van Grind. Hope I didn't mangle that too much. And Kit Moret, who's a good arm twister, I'm told. Have you guys decided a spokesperson when we start down this first round? Kit, would you like?
We were not that organized. So, it's pulling a lot of people from different parts of the company. So we did not huddle ahead of time. So, but I can start just with a few notes. We've corresponded a few times over the years about the capacity of the Lummi cable, and I'm also involved with the GWEMIS electrification project, reviewing that right now. And the biggest challenge with these electric ferries is the rapid charging. It's not just charging a battery, that's not a huge deal, but it's the supercharged rapid charging that's a surge on our system. So that's really what we're evaluating. And GWEMIS is looking at installing shoreside batteries to offset that. That's what they're proposing, at least in the preliminary look at that. What's interesting, one of the things that I wanted to get people involved in this is that PSE is defining kind of a new planning process. Traditionally we look at loads and we identify what system improvements need to be done. And we're actively working on updating a planning process that allows a customer involvement, whether, it's all the things, demand response, how can we address large new loads with alternatives to wire, just upgrading the system. So upgrading the system is still an alternative that we would look at. Lummi is kind of unique because that submarine cable it's about 20 years old now. I was in planning when we put it in, so I feel like I've been here a while. But so I was out there when we were installing it. It's rated for 34 kV. The system's 12 kV right now. So we do have that's always, it's kind of a big thing to look at, but we have the option of increasing capacity by upping the voltage on that system. There's 972 customers on the island. Most of the time that cable's running under 100 amps, but it's the little short peaks that can push it up there. We do have we have a SCADA recloser. So I have, I have 8760 hourly data for what the load is on the cable at any given time. So we have lots of good data. But one of the things about these planning process, usually a project lands on our door when it's next year, or we want to have it done by the end of the year. And that doesn't give you a lot of time for exploring these longer term alternatives. So you guys have presented us with a really unique opportunity with this longer term, 5 years out before the ferry comes on board, gives us time. I think we're almost looking at this as a pilot of running through our new distribution planning process of how you engage customers to participate in a solution. So the good news is we're looking at time here. I know that funding is challenging. I know I always have in my head, well, who's going to pay for what, or which, where is what participation does the utility have versus the customers? But I think we have an opportunity to partner in that. So some of the, Chris is here with PSE because his involvement is in that customer engagement piece of it, and the, how we walk customers through our process with all the different layers. So I don't know who to hand it off to next, but, or if you have any questions, sorry about my landline.
I'll let you answer your phone if you like.
No, it's usually.
Donovan, our county council member, logged in yet. He's teaching a class, said he would join us en route. I'm going to give it to Ellen Murphy of the Whatcom County Climate Impact Advisory Committee or Board. Ellen, talk to us.
Sure. And thanks for inviting us, because we are in the process right now of updating our climate action plan. And of course, electrification is a key strategy. It's in the new state energy strategy also. So it appears predominantly throughout the document. Microgrids are certainly essential for climate resilience. And they also appear predominantly in the climate action plan revision. And so far we've been looking at the various microgrids, Arlington, of course the Opaco, and even the new installation over the utility scale microgrid over in Richland. Myself and Dave Hostetler retired from Pacific Northwest National Labs and moved to the Bellingham area several years ago. And Dave Kirshner is a member of our Climate Impact Advisory Group also. But we're here to learn, and certainly we support microgrids from a single home to neighborhoods to installations like you're looking at for the island and for the electric ferry. So we're here to learn and would be happy to answer any questions.
That's great, Ellen. Thank you for participating. We'll get into the woods a little bit on round 2 and get a little bit more of a free-for-all brainstorming session going. I'd like to hear from all the groups. I'm going to turn it to Robbie Eckworth, who's a senior planner for Whatcom County, and probably the guy that's going to tell us we can't do this and we can't do that. How's that for an intro, Robbie?
Oh, I'm used to it.
Okay. And pathways forward, we can make this happen.
I was actually hoping to hear from Public Works first before I started. If we have a Public Works member available, just to see what their thoughts were on the electrification of the ferry.
And Roland Middleton, the microphone is yours. I'm not sure if Roland dropped off or not. I don't see Roland. Are you out there still? Okay. Apparently Roland has had to drop off for some reason, so it's back to you, Robbie.
Okay, no problem. So what I can tell you at the moment is I probably have more questions than answers. Has Lummi Island identified a site where they think this might be appropriate is my first question.
No.
Okay. From a planning perspective, I think at this point, I don't have a lot of answers other than I think we'd want to keep it out of resource lands. So the south half of the island is zoned rural forestry. So that's the first thought that has come to mind. I do believe this will likely require a code amendment, specifically for the solar system. Right now, solar farms are only identified in our code in the heavy impact industrial zone. And I understand that technologies are changing and this is going to become more common in the future. So I think that we are definitely interested in seeing at least microgrids being expanded into other areas of the county. I'm sure that Lummi Island will not be the only community in Whatcom County that is interested in pursuing this in the next 10, 20 years. I think your first course of action would probably be to start with a pre-application meeting when you identify some sites that might work. Through that process, we can identify any issues that might come up during the planning process before you even go through the code amendment process. I think your biggest issue is likely going to be fire flow. From what I understand, these batteries can have a fire hazard associated with it, especially when we start looking at bigger batteries. So I'd be interested to see what your plan would be for fire flow in particular. Let me see here. I had some other questions.
You want to pick that up in round 2?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Steve with the Whatcom County PUD, did you show up? I don't see you on the screen here. Okay.
This is Brian Walters. Steve won't be participating today, and I will. I'm the Assistant General Manager at Whatcom PUD. I want to thank you for the invite and being able to participate in today's meeting. You know, from our perspective, my main role here today is just listen and learn, see what the issues are, and kind of evaluate how we may or may not be able to assist you with what you're attempting to do there on the island. For those of you that don't know us, you know, we are the utility up in the northwest corner of the county. Our primary focus in the past has been on industrial users, both of electricity and water. And, you know, that's our utility system currently is built to serve those. But we've more recently been looking at how we can assist the broader community, you know, utilizing, we have the full authority to provide the same utility services as an Orcas Power Light or Puget Sound Energy or the cities of Blaine and Sumas, but we haven't fully exercised those. So we are looking at how we can assist the broader community and provide services off our current system. And, you know, the two things that come to mind right now, and, you know, need to fully understand just what all the issues are, but in the area of funding, you know, we have the same ability as a PSC or an Orcas in applying to the Department of Commerce for matching funds or funds to support a project like this. The other thing is that we might be able to, and I'm just throwing this out, I guess getting in round 2 brainstorming, but first of all, recognizing that PSE is your distribution provider out there, they're your power supplier. So anything we would do would probably be in coordination with PSE, but we could potentially provide what I'll call grid support services. I mean, we might be able to get involved with a microgrid project where we actually finance, own, operate, maintain, and then provide that grid support service, whether it's recharging the electric ferry or providing support during outages when the main feeder onto the island fails or storm, you know, storm-related outages. So the big question becomes the cost of that service. So how do we cover costs? We're not your local provider. And that's an issue, open issue for us.
Well, thank you for joining us, and my best to Steve, and we may take you up on becoming one of our partners. That's why we're starting very early in the process on this. I'm going to turn it over to Bill Daly, who's on the board of directors representing the Lemhi Island Community Association. Been around many years, publishes our newsletters, and Brown Betty makes runs around the island. Bill, welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to learn, and it seems as though planning is on our agenda right now. Looking at all avenues, keeping an open mind, and making lots of notes.
Well, thank you, Bill. From there, Rama Blake has been a champion of the Ferry Advisory Committee and herding cats, and she does so much for this island. I'm going to turn it to Rama. My praises could go on for the rest of the session, Rama, but please talk to us a little bit.
No, this has been enlightening just to see all the players involved and the caveats, but we are focusing on the design of our new replacement ferry, and it's obvious there's a lot of change at play, and what do we need to be aware of, and what are the opportunities? It's both the best of times and a challenging time. So I appreciate everybody bringing your expertise and sharing here today. So thank you. We have a steep hill to climb, but we really want to make this new replacement ferry as environmentally and community focused as possible.
Well, thank you, Rama. And I know Roland wanted to be here for the entire thing, and probably Todd Donovan. But the state crab board is looking at our application as we speak for a $10 million grant for the new ferry boat. So some things take priority, and getting money is one of them.
Well, getting money, and I mean, it's both a very tough time and a very challenging time where questions, but I think there's more opportunities to do the right thing here than any other time. So I'm very hopeful, and I appreciate everybody bringing your best to this meeting. And thank you, Mike, for pulling it together.
Thank you so much, Rama. John Granger is Fire Chief for our Emergency Division, and John is on the line. John, you want to add to the conversation here? Well, did we lose John? I know he was here. He may come back.
He's down. He is appearing on my screen with just his name, John G.
He may have had to step away. Firefighters have to do that from time to time. Let's see. Next on my list of speakers, Bob Anderson, member of the Health and Wellness Committee, Lemhi Island. Hello, Bob.
Hi there. Hey, Mike, thanks for inviting me. Just a quick thing on the Lemhi Island Health and Wellness Resource Committee. It's an informal group. We've been collaborating together for a couple of years, and our whole purpose is to do whatever we can to help assure and enhance the health and well-being of our resident community. And certainly been involved in some of the issues related to COVID. This is a larger issue, and it has to do with the plan shows promise in terms of providing for security for people, particularly who are isolated in their homes. We have a number of aging members of our community. I could count myself. And the prospects to have a more secure source of power for those who may be isolated in times of emergency is a very important thing to us. And we'll be glad to add our input and thoughts from the community around the area of health and well-being. I just want to say thanks for getting this conversation started and bringing good and thoughtful people together.
Thank you very much, Bob. You wear two hats. You are also on the Lemhi Island Heritage Trust Board.
No, I'm not on the board. I just try to help out in whatever way I can. Scott Josiah would be your your guy on this panel who's on the board. But I love the Lummi Island Heritage Trust, and it would have, I'm sure, some things to say about this project.
Okay, well, to speak for the trust, we have Judy Bush, who is their chair.
Judy. Oh, there's Judy. Terrific.
And Judy, take it away.
Yeah, well, the Lummi Island Heritage Trust is a nonprofit entity here on the island, and the mission is essentially to preserve the nature of Lummi Island and to engage the community in protecting our beautiful home. We're always interested in the climate issues as we're studying the various preserves that we own and manage, trying to figure out, you know, the best ways to preserve the trees and the farmland and the wetlands out here. So anything that involves the community and involves protecting our environment, we're very much want to be a part of. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Judy. We're at the bottom of the regular speakers for organizations. I'm dying to hear from John Dooley, who's manager of PSE Microgrid Pilot Projects, but I'm going to turn it back up to, first of all, Opalco, and then we'll turn it down to John and others at PSE to chime in here.
Yeah, why don't I, you know what, great conversation, by the way. I really appreciate it. Let me go in reverse order. Judy, the Lummi Island Community Trust or Foundation, as we know them out here, we have a preservation trust. We also have a land bank out here that's doing, you know, equivalent work. We have to safeguard our environment. And one of the really important things for us to figure out how to do is how do we balance all these things together? When I touched on earlier about weaving important things together, well, we need to figure out agriculture. We need to figure out how we can put solar projects in different locations so we can get emergency power to those in need when our power goes out. And it's really important and I'm glad that you're part of this conversation, because we all have to figure out how to work together, because there's going to be impacts. And we need to figure out where is the sacred area that we need to stay away from and safeguard, as opposed to area that makes sense from an engineering perspective, that we can actually work together and accomplish both, because you got competing, you know, priorities when it comes to carbon reduction versus trying to get, you know, electric ferries and so forth. So really appreciate that. I think that's one of the, you know, the reason I have this logo next to me, it's called the Island Way campaign, is to start that dialogue. And we, you know, I applaud the fact that Lummi Island is looking the bigger picture and trying to get everybody on board with what your goals are and how to weave them together. So well done. Fire was brought up. We ended up with a battery project. We originally started with a vanadium flow, which didn't have a fire risk at all. We ended up with something was a little different. It was an iron phosphate battery. So, you know, Robbie, I know that you brought up the issue of fire. I think some of the old technology is probably has more thermal runaway than the one that we use. Our fire suppression is enclosed within and eliminates the fire from within. And we need to make sure that our protocols are that nobody opens them, and so we don't have any of those issues. But I think it's a little I don't know, easier than you think in terms of the fire suppression systems, depending on the technology you have. Another thing I did want to touch on, just because of the conversation that was going on, is connectivity. I know when Shane was talking about some of the lesson learned that he had about connecting the battery together, that was really important from a technology perspective for communications. And I can't understate how important that is, about how we managed, you know, we started an internet subsidiary out here called Rock Island that manages the internet side. And we have fiber optic cable that run to this particular installation on Decatur, and it connects our substations together. And then we actually go to member homes as well. And I can't understate the importance of that communication infrastructure to be successful in this, because remember, you need to remotely operate and control instantaneous demand response devices, turn those off, and then make sure, you know, simultaneously with plugins that you, you know, let the battery discharge at the same exact time. So technology and communication infrastructure is going to be a big challenge or hurdle. I don't know, do you guys have fiber optic cables on the island?
We do.
Then that'll work out really well. And you just got to make sure that you route those around in the right spots.
Very good. John, do you want to add to that as a microgrid PSC person?
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys all for having me. So first, my name is John Dooley. I'm a strategy development manager at Puget Sound Energy. So in my current role, I work as part of our distributed energy resources team, and that is a part of our clean energy strategy group. We were formed last year in response to Washington's passing the Clean Energy Transformation Act in 2019. So our group is looking very intently right now in how do we develop our first clean energy implementation plan? And in particular, my group, how are DERs part of that solution? And that's something that we are working with at UTC, and that will look into, we are really working on that from the guiding principles of being our customers' clean energy partner of choice, but also making sure that we continue with reliability and the practicality of the solutions we bring to the grid, right? So that is something that we are working with UTC right now, as far as what does that look like from a distributed generation, distributed resources like storage, and demand response resources moving forward. In my previous role at PSC, which I'm still working on to a degree as a product development manager in our new product development group, was a combination of customer-sided battery storage projects. We've done a couple of those, and that was a chance for me to work with Shane. We did some small demonstrations for behind-the-meter projects in Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo. And one that we're currently working on that I think is more relevant is we're working on a community battery demonstration, where one of those use cases will include the capability to microgrid, right? So we're really looking at from a small scale of a collection of small buildings, and to be able to actually disconnect that from the system in the event of an emergency or outage on the main circuit, and provide that resilience for that localized setting. So that microgrid is something that we're currently looking into. It's I understand that that's really relevant here to what Lummi Island's interested in, and there's a lot of work that we're doing from the engineering side to make that a possibility, and being more of the customer strategy business side of things, just understanding the challenges there, right, of the infrastructure that's necessary to do so. But certainly that's something that as we get approval for that project and are able to hopefully deploy by end of year and start testing and evaluating that use case for microgrid, and something that we can hopefully share in the future as how we're learning how to do this from a customer side scale, in addition to what Shane Richards has been able to do with our Glacier battery at utility scale.
Well, thank you, John. You may be my new best friend in the future.
Always looking forward to it. Maybe we could go hiking and talk about some batteries in the future. It'd be fun. Microgrids.
I'd like to hear from either Christopher or Kelsey, or possibly Casey. You want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Stromheller, and I'm an economic development manager here at PSC. And to ride the coattails of what Kit had mentioned, we're really actively looking as an organization right now about how we improve our customer journey. So from a perspective of when we're kicking the can around like we're doing right now, all the way to the point where we're ready to start applying for applications or for grants or things of that like. And that's really where I step in, and where I can offer maybe the most help, is that I can be a point of contact for all parties, and also be a person that you can lean on if you have questions that you just don't know who to talk to about. So I'm, I guess, a glorified babysitter at times, but I'm able to get the right people talking at the right time, and really with the outcome being that there's a speed of response to your questions, right? So things don't stretch out into the future, and maybe guidelines are being missed, or people don't have questions that have been answered in a timely manner. So that's where I hope that I can be of the most benefit. And with that said, we are working on a new customer journey and a new process where we would partner with the communities that we're engaging with. And so in this example, we would be partnering with the island, looking at all these different products and services that we currently have and can offer, or, is there opportunities given this long timeline that where we could strategize an idea and pilot a program that would fit the island's needs. And so, yeah, that's really all I had to offer. This is a new position within PSC. I'm the very first economic development manager that the company's had. And so we're figuring it out still, but we've made some great traction over this last year. And we're really excited about the opportunities in the future and really excited about opportunities like this to be able to partner together. So thanks everyone for having me, and I'll give it back to you, Mike.
Well, thank you, Christopher. You now have elevated yourself to my co-best friend. John.
Hey, Mike, I'm here now. This is John Granger.
Hey, John, we tried to get you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I for some reason, my mic went out on my computer, so I'm on the phone now. I'm John Granger. I'm the EMS Division Chief and Disaster Prep Division Head. I'm speaking for the department today, fire department. Our big concern, of course, is fire, and with the increase in with the use of battery power and lithium ion, there's always an incident of fire and explosions if there's something goes wrong. But that we feel could be mitigated, and it just takes more training on our part in how to deal with that. This, of course, will be the third ferry change I've been witness to since I've lived on the island. And there are those that are excited about it over here and those that see the ferry as being something that decreases growth. So if we stay small, we won't get any bigger. But change is always difficult, and we'll just have to change with that. Otherwise, I'm just here to get information for the department and see what we can do to help.
Well, thank you for going through all the equipment changes, John, to get back online. I'm going to hand it over to the Climate Action Advisory Committee again. Either Dave or David or both. Go ahead.
Well, I come from a slightly different perspective from Ellen because I live on Lummi Island, and I actually have a net meter on my property and a 10 kilowatt ground mount solar system out in our yard. I am very excited at the prospect of a microgrid for Lummi Island because we do lose power out here quite frequently in the wintertime. I'm always amazed at how quickly PSC is able to restore power. But having said that, it would be really helpful to have that backup power, especially if it can facilitate the electrification of the ferry and lowering the carbon footprint of the ferry, which I think is a goal that many, if not all of us share. So having said that, my only question, if I could pose a question, would be what obstacles do folks from PSC see, if any, to pairing a community solar project with a microgrid project? I've read a little about the Arlington microgrid project, and I learned that they actually had half of their solar units reserved on day one when they launched the project, and within a month they were fully subscribed and had a waiting list. So it seemed like at least a few years ago there was strong interest and demand down in Snohomish County. There are other microgrid projects around or community solar projects, and so I would just like to hear more about that, how we might make that possible. Thanks.
Let's pick that up, David, in the next round, and I'll be calling on PSC here shortly to collect your thoughts on that question. Good one. Dave Hostetler, formerly of Northwest Labs, are you still there? Apparently.
Yes, yes, I am. I don't have anything to add other than we're in a learning mode trying to understand. There are many microgrid projects that the state commerce has co-funded or spearheaded around the area, and we're looking at each of those to learn what might be applicable to Whatcom County. So we appreciate the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here, Dave. Let's see, Roland, have you popped back on yet? Apparently not. Next up, Judy Olson for the Heritage Trust. Lives across the street from me. Hi, Judy.
Hi there.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything to add, really. Just this is very exciting. And I think whoever it was that made the point that we are a good maybe 5 years out, I think that is really key because I think we do have time to plan for this and make it happen. So that's all I really have to add.
We're pushing the rock up the hill, so thank you for helping push.
Yep.
And finally, Scott Josiah, also a neighbor down the street from me. Scott used to be, I'm bragging, director of, I'm going to get the state wrong, Wyoming Forestry Division. Scott, why don't you talk to us a little bit? He's on the Heritage Trust also.
Nebraska, actually, I think. Scott?
Scott, are you still with us?
I am. I just was muted. Yeah, it's Nebraska, not Wyoming.
Close enough.
Those are fighting words in Nebraska. So, you know, I just find that, you know, this is really interesting to hear that some of these other communities have already established microgrids and are moving forward either in the planning stages or actually on the ground and getting them operational. I have a lot of questions, which I'll save until a little bit later, but to me, this is all about resilience. And the island has an aging population. Some of those people need electricity all the time for medical devices and things like that. And long-term power outages could be really critically damaging to our resilience and to the health and vitality of people like that. So, and then with the other, you know, it was interesting to hear that with the shift from coal to intermittent power sources, that may increase the need for these kinds of microgrid backup systems. So I think it's a great idea. Rather than everybody investing on solar panels on their roofs, to do it as a community, it makes a lot of sense to me. So anyway, that's my comments for now.
Well, thank you so much. Anybody else want to speak that has not done so?
This is Casey Harmon from Puget.
Hi, Casey.
All right, I'd like to. Hi. So I wanted to talk just briefly about some technical things that I think are worth considering. So in case you don't know, Puget actually has 3 intentional islands. Besides Glacier, they have a 2 megawatt backup generator at the Crystal Mountain Resort. And they also have, and that's been there since 1969, and they have a 50 megawatt hydro machine at Upper Baker that also intentionally islands, and that has done that since 1959. So Puget actually has a long history of running and operating what I like to call intentional islands. And I've been involved in all 3 of them in various capacities. Shane and I did some work with Shane up at Glacier as well, and still am involved with Glacier. But one of the things that I have learned through this process is that you have to pay attention to the technical details to meet your business objectives. Especially with inverter-based resources like batteries, there are some very real impacts to the power system, both connected to the power system and also in microgrid, that you can't ignore. And we saw that in spades at Glacier. Not to bore you with the details, but there were lots and lots of technical hurdles we had to surmount. And a lot of it, some of it was the nature of where it was, and some of it was how the project was scoped. And I won't bore you with the details, but what I would encourage you to do is do not ignore the technical details to the last, because they can have major impacts in the cost and the ultimate viability of the final product. So that's all I wanted to say. to make sure that we don't ignore the physics, because it plays very much.
Well, very good. Thank you, Casey, for those words of wisdom. We'll take it to heart. I'm going to turn it back up to Russell Carreri, that kind of got me started on this, and I really appreciate it. It just kind of bloomed and blossomed. Russell, any thoughts on what you've heard?
No, I don't think so. I think it's, the right approach. At least you've got enough time in your planning to make it happen. And, as Foster kind of pushed out there, the fire risks, one of the reasons we decided with lithium iron phosphate was to reduce that risk out on Decatur, since it's an unmanned facility for us. We don't even have people on the island 24/7. We operate it from Lopez Island, send crews over. And we have some training opportunities coming up with the local fire districts, just in case they respond, since technically Decatur's under the Department of Natural Resources as their direct fire aid. And so that was a critical piece for us, is maintaining safety out there. As far as it goes with the charging, things like that, we've had a lot of discussions with the Washington State Ferries to figure that out. There's a lot of documents out there. I realize there's some people on the call that are involved with the Guimas Ferry also, but if you do some research in the Jumbo Mark II studies that were done for the Washington State Ferry system, you'll get a lot of good information of how to make this work. And then it's just got to be scaled to size.
Well, thanks for that. My background is with Metro, and as I was leaving, the electric buses were coming on board with induction charging. They charge them up at night, the fleet goes out. When they pull into a bus stop at the bigger terminals, the bus is taking on power automatically. It's quite seamless, and then off it goes for its next run. It's not like plugging in this huge cumbersome cable anymore. It just has to be built into the design. We're at the end of round 2. We're doing well on time. We're going to get out of here a little early, so hang with me. And I'm just going to do kind of a free-for-all. If it gets too messy, I'll say sorry. But anybody that wants to raise a question or answer a question, come now.
Thanks, Mike. This is Corinne Vandegrand. I'm with Puget Sound Energy. I'm the local government affairs rep for Whatcom County. And I hadn't introduced myself yet, so I just wanted to just introduce who I am and kind of what I do up here. I've heard a lot of comments about microgrids from local electeds and different climate planning processes. And so I'm just sitting in to hear kind of what the barriers and challenges and benefits are in Whatcom County. One exciting project that I'm tracking this year is a community solar project in the city of Bellingham. So we are working through the legal and permitting process for that, hopefully to get it up and running by the end of this year or early next. So if we can gather support, then that could provide a good test case for something out in Lummi Island. I know PSC is working on similar microgrids and battery projects, community solar, demand response. So this Lummi project could be a cool way to pull all of that together. So thanks. A little bit of a delayed intro there, but I'm happy to be on the call.
Oh, no. Anybody else from PSC want to talk a little bit? We will be contacting you, I'm sure.
Mike, I can jump out in.
Yeah, go ahead, Foster.
Don't mean to interrupt anyone. I know permitting for us has been a challenge, and it probably will be for you guys as well. We were looking at other locations within our community to place, some additional community solar projects, and it was amazing how fast people, not in my backyarders, would really crop up. And you're trying to do the right thing for climate change and really electrify as much heating and transportation as we can, but don't discount that. Permitting is something that requires a big grassroots effort, and everyone needs to kind of buy in what it is. It takes a long time to do these projects, and you're probably going to get into DNR. I know when you know, when we did a submarine cable replacement project, it took us a decade to do it. And I think good thing you guys are getting out in front of this. I applaud that, because it's going to be essential for you guys to do that. One thing I just checked on with my internet company, Mike, I asked whether or not you guys had fiber, and they were questioning that. You may have a point-to-point connection, because we actually are partnered with T-Mobile out there. I don't know how well your T-Mobile phones work, but I know you got, there's an antenna on your island out there, but I don't know if you have fiber, and you might want to just put that in your thought process. I know I don't want to get into PSE's business, but I know when it comes time to replace the submarine cable, it's pretty daunting. I mean, it took us a long time with a lot of permitting, navigation to go through. And what we do is we have 2 cables in each of our major crossings, and so we can take one out of service and still function with the other one in place. And that was, you know, that's been a godsend for us, because we can run our island on one of those cables on each of those crossings. So think about that, you know, as, you know, Kit, as you come to replace, you know, those thoughts and trying to figure out, you know, how you're going to serve it. And then working into some fiber optic cable embedded in that submarine cable is probably a good way to go too.
So we actually do have a spare fiber optic embedded in that submarine cable.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's good news.
Yes, we did that when we replaced the cable about 20 years ago.
Well, that's good.
As far as I know, it's unused.
Yes, well, that's good to know that, you know, that's available. I know the one that I was referring to is probably the one that goes up to the tower, your communication tower that you have. That's probably not fiber fed, so that's probably where they're coming from. Thank you.
So, Robbie, short of rezoning Lummi Island as heavy industrial, I'm hoping that we can do something to get some solar and some wind going, small scale at first, get people used to the idea, and scale up from there as more and more electric cars come online and everybody wants to charge, and suddenly they're big supporters of whatever we can do.
Sure, and just to clarify, heavy impact industrial is currently the only zoning district in Whatcom County that allows for it. And what I meant to say was the residential rural island zone likely needs to be amended to allow this type of use, which will likely require, or the planning department will likely want to see this required as a conditional use permit process, so there is a public process in place. Another thing that you're likely going to want to think about is lot coverage requirements. Right now, the residential rural island zone only allows for 2,500 square feet of lot coverage for structures, or 35%, whichever is greater. I know the Decatur Island site, it looks like they covered most of that 3.6 acre parcel. So I'd imagine that you would need to amend the lot coverage standard to allow for more for this specific use. But again, I just want to reiterate, every specific site has its own challenges. So once you identify a few sites, I'd recommend reaching out to me, and we can identify if there's any natural resources issues, if there's infrastructure in place to support this use, or if there's any other sort of issue that we're not thinking of, that we can look into once we identify a site on Lummi Island for this project.
Well, thank you for that, Robbie. We'll, this won't be our last conversation, I'm sure. For sure. Anybody else?
I would like to just chime in a second, if that's okay. Yeah, my name is Mary Ross, and I'm on the board for the Lummi Island Community Association, and I'm also a board member for the Heritage Trust. A couple questions that I have that I think they're important things to think about is that land is getting really expensive here, and it's really, a lot of it is totally privately controlled, and except for the, you know, the trust lands and the DNR lands and stuff like the state-owned lands. But what about like putting in wind because it would seem like that would have a smaller footprint than a huge solar array. And also, what is the impact of adding individual solar projects on people's homes and stuff like that? Can that would be something that would help add to the grid as well? And those are my two questions. So I think or a statement, I think that just stuff is getting real expensive on the island now. So I think this is a really good time to be doing this, but I think that could be a real stumbling block for us.
Thank you for that. Let's take a stab at that. Anybody? Well, I'll just say that I'm hearing somebody.
I could chime in there if you like, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know, we're looking at everything we possibly can, whether it's rooftop solar, whether it's a utility scale solar, because it's easier to maintain. And some people just don't have the ability to maintain their system or don't have the right solar profile. And we don't want a lot of trees to leave. And every time you turn around and someone puts solar on their roof, it seems to me that the trees in the area usually get trimmed back, or some of them leave. And so I think there's a balance between everything. And I think that if you can find a wind site, I think that's an option, but I think you need to supplement it. I think if you looked in orders of magnitude, what you're looking at, for us to get 30% of our load generated locally, it's not one wind generator. It's not one utility scale solar thing. It's really going to require a whole bunch of thought and really understand your data and your loads and your characteristics of what you're trying to accomplish. There was a comment earlier about know your details, because they're larger than you think, and the impacts are going to require a lot of thought and a lot of land. Or even if you put a wind generator up there, it's good to balance it with a solar project, so you can get, when the wind's blowing and the sun's not, that's good. Or vice versa. So you just got to think of all the different approaches you possibly can, because I think when you're done with doing your math and your analysis of how much power you really want to generate, I think it'll surprise everybody on how much area and land you're going to need.
Well, thank you for that. And that's kind of the big question in my mind is our load goes up about double in the wintertime over summer loads. And that's the time when the solar radiation is the least. And so you have that, we're not generating that much solar, but the demand is up double, and we have to deal with that. So anyway, it's 51 after. We've gained up our minutes. I'm going to turn it over to Charles for a quick summary and a wrap up. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving us your precious time today, for helping us kind of start this conversation. I'm much more enlightened. I'm pretty optimistic going forward. This is a good group. So thank you all so much. Charles, you want to wrap it up? Charles Bailey, are you muted?
I was. Well, hello again. I'll just do a quick summary, and then there's still some time if people want to emphasize certain points I may have overlooked. I have 5 points. First, we are actually at a very good point in time for doing this. On the supply side, we have 2 pilots, actually more now, in operation. More are coming. There's a long history of PSC doing this. And on the demand side, we can see that the switch to electrifying more transport and heating are going to cause more demand for electricity across the board in our regions. And 3 ferry systems are also electrifying: Guaymas, Lummi Island, and Washington State ferries. So we're fortunate to have all these resources, and particularly, as several people noted, the long planning horizon, about 5 years before our convertible ferry hopefully goes into operation, and you're all invited to the launch. Second, technology. Battery choices are multiplying. Someone pointed out it's important early on, don't ignore the details. This point came up again later. Know your details about land use and alternatives. The need for local management systems grows as power generation decentralizes, so there's an increasing technical complexity. I was impressed that your Decatur Island facility you actually manage from Lopez Island. And that says a lot to another point about fire safety, choosing a battery technology and a design and containers that allows you to ensure that's there and also to meet various planning requirements. The point of also under technology about the need for fiber optic cable, I'm delighted to be reminded we actually have a fiber optic cable and the undersea cable kit, if I got that right. We have kind of a hodgepodge of things right now on Lummi Island, but not very much fiber. Third point, we are fortunate to have Puget Sound Energy attend this meeting in force with all of your expertise, and particularly your renewed emphasis or your greater emphasis on community outreach and the working together to tailor future power supply to island needs. I think you'll hear from our discussion today, Lummi Island, we want to be part of your future. Point 4, a lot of good advice from planning, climate protection, the permitting process. Everyone has to buy in. It takes a long time. We've touched on that in terms of, again, land use. And finally, point 5, as you can see, we have a lot of interest here on Lummi and a wide range of community organizations whose members made time to come today to get educated so that we can think more about it. So for all of you with organizations off the island, we're ready to work with you. And we know that Mike has at least 2 best friends of Mike and perhaps more. So with that summary, I'll just close and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Charles, for helping me organize this, and you've been a great asset. We're going to finish about 5 minutes early, which Charles kept reminding me. People really enjoy getting out of meetings early. So we accomplished that. I think we got a great deal done today, and it's the first step of a long journey. So with that, thank you all again. Enjoy your lunches, and we'll leave the channel open for a few more minutes, 10 or 15 minutes until everybody's gone. And if there's some networking or questions that want to go back and forth, we'll just let you have at it. So thank you all.
Thanks for organizing, Mike.